Welcome to the latest episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast. My name is Brad Cooper, and I'll be your host. Today's episode features the one and only Bart Yasso. Now, for the runners in the audience, you know that name. He's the Chief Running Officer for Runner's World. He's known worldwide as the mayor of running for all the events where he shows up and cheers and runs and sometimes does a talk beforehand. His book is titled My Life on the Run. I mean, this guy is running. So for the runners, you're going to dig this one. But if you're not a runner, hang in there with me. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Because we're not talking about how to train. We're not talking about, you need to do this much and that much. We're talking about life. We're talking about the uniqueness of each individual. We're talking about the idea of listening to your body. All the concepts that Bart talks about in this interview are more about life than they are about running. So I hope you'll stick in there with me and just kind of see where this goes. A couple of things to highlight. First of all, I was told last week, Brad, be sure to tell people to subscribe to the podcast. It's great that they listen, but it's really helpful if they subscribe. So I don't really know how all this stuff works, so I will take that person's word for it. And please beg you, if you enjoy this podcast, please click that subscribe button. I guess it makes a big difference. And then we just updated our website. So if you haven't been to catalystcoachinginstitute.com in the last month, take a peek. We've spent a lot of time and energy and money getting this thing fine-tuned and some cool new photos and layouts and easier access to things. So love your feedback. If you have a chance to peek at that, that'd be awesome. So again, it's catalystcoachinginstitute.com. As always, we're here for you. So if you have anything you want to talk through, if you have any questions about this whole idea of becoming a certified wellness coach or how it works with the career you're currently in as a clinician or a triathlon coach or whatever it might be, and you're wondering, how does this fit? Folks, that's what we do. We sit down with people every day, get on the phone, talk through what this thing's all about. So you're not bugging us. Feel free, reach out. Let's talk. We'll tell you if it doesn't seem to make sense for where you're at right now. But please reach out to us anytime. Email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Now, on with the latest episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast. Well, Bart Yasso, this is so fun to have you on the podcast today. I've been running most of my life. I'll share some of that story maybe later on. But reading about you, doing your Yasso 800s, which will at some point need to pop into this discussion. Man, you have the coolest titles ever. You're referred to as the mayor of runner. You're referred to as the chief running officer for Runner's World. You're an author. You're a member of the Hall of Fame. You have covered all the bases, my friends. Can you give us kind of a 10,000-foot view of some of the highlights along the way in this crazy, amazing life you've had that people may not know about?
Yeah, Brad, first off, thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it is crazy. I do get this title as mayor of running. Of course, it's not an elected position. I don't know how I became the mayor of running, but I hear that all the time, and I've been hearing for 20 years. And my real job was the chief running officer at Runner's World magazine. I retired last year, but I was the chief running officer at Runner's World, and I worked at Runner's World for 31 years. So
wow,
it was a dream. It really was. I felt like when I started at Runner's World, I got the job that I always wanted. It didn't really seem like a job. Like I always used to go into work and say, okay, if I had to do something today that I wanted to do, this is actually what I want to do. And, this is my job. Like that doesn't happen all the time to everyone. So I felt very lucky I was in that position. And then, Runner's World really liked me because I was willing to travel around the world and spread the love of running on a global level.
Right.
And, it was really like a dream come true to travel around the world and do crazy races and meet people and experience cultures I never thought I would experience. And to think that running was that vehicle that took me to all these places, it just, thank God I started running about 43 years ago. Thank God I started because it really opened so many doors I never thought possible.
To talk us through that a little bit, because, I was, I chatted offline a little bit about this. I was out for a run the other day. I was thinking about our interview coming up, and it was almost this overwhelming feeling of, I just love this. Like I am having so much fun just being out here on this trail, just coming down. How did the love affair that you've had with running for 40 some years, how did it start? What was the catalyst for that originally?
Yeah, Brad. So originally I wanted a life change. I was not leading a healthy lifestyle. So I wanted to make change. And I gravitated towards running, not because I thought I'd be a runner and not that I thought I would run races all over the world or work at Runner's World. I just thought running would be something that would get me in shape, give me focus. And then I actually fell in love with it.
Hmm.
And I didn't expect that. I didn't know that would happen. And then I did that first race, and then I was hooked on doing races. And once that happened, it just snowballed out of control. But I never knew I would really love it like that. And then once you're immersed in the running community, which is a pretty supportive, encouraging community,
Yeah.
that's the part that you don't know until you're in that community. And the community wasn't that big back in the 70s, but it still was an encouraging place and a place to be there where people helped you and helped others. And that's what I just loved about it.
Hmm.
And, I always, and I just never stopped. I just kept going and immersing myself in the community. And then, of course, working at Runner's World, you're, a major part of the community. And just going to races and just meeting some of the most amazing people. I said I never had the chance to stop. It just was, it felt like I was, stuck in this wave that just kept cresting.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to get out of that wave because it was a good, comfortable place to be. Like you're in that, when you see that surfer tucked in that little curl and
Yeah.
you see that smile on her face, that's how I felt the whole time running. I was in that little curve that I wanted to be. And just, I always wanted to travel around the world and, to do it for running, and to do it as a job. I never thought that was possible.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I always tell people. My tagline is never limit where running can take you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, geographically, because it did all those things for me. So I want people to realize that how much the sport can impact their life in a positive way. But they got to take those first couple steps and get started and then see where it goes from there. And I always felt when I worked at Runner's World, before I'd walk into my office every day, I would remind myself, I have my real job to do, whatever my assignments were that day, but I always took it on myself. Like somehow today I got to find someone who's not a runner, doesn't think they could be a runner, and I got to turn that person into a runner or a group of people. And I challenged myself every day. I walked in my office, and I did that some part of the day I would just take time to say, okay, let's figure it out. How can I get a hold of a group or somebody that I can convince them that running is going to help their life and change their life to the better. And I used many examples of people that I met, and of course, it happened in my own life. So it was fun to take that challenge every day and see if I could convince people to be a runner.
Well, I love that. And let's run down that path for a second. You
Sure.
and I are, people might look at us and say, you guys are weird. You talk about loving running. Sure, yeah, you
Right.
goes over there, have your little party. But frankly, somebody else is thinking, I don't know how I got into this podcast. I don't even like running. Why would I ever run? What would you say to that person? How would you share that passion? Because everyone knows it's, in quotes, good for me. Everyone knows I should
Sure.
do it, but that's not very good motivation when you have to do it because you should. What conversation would have that with that person, not on the should side, but on the joy side, the love side that might maybe
Yeah.
had that
I mean,
conversation previously?
I always said to someone, I typically run on trails. I've run most of my miles on trails. So,
Mm-hmm.
you're out on the trails, you're out there just loving life, but you're working hard. And then you pop out of the trail and you either, your car's on parking lot or wherever it is. And now all of a sudden you pop out and then people see you. And, you probably had about I probably had a frown on my face because I was back there pushing it and sweat coming down. And, people think, what is this guy doing? He looks like he's miserable. But they don't know inside. You just feel you're so happy and so alive and just feel the feeling of accomplishment. And that's what I always tell people. Like, you just got to get away from the progression happens in small increments. You just don't start running a marathon. You got to let the sport come to you, and you'll get faster and stronger and better at it if you have the patience. But I say, and that's the same way with the love of it. Once it becomes a little bit easier, and once you meet more people, that's when the love of the sport really takes off. Sort of like when you gain endurance and can start running up 10 miles. You start out running a mile or two, and then you get up to 10, and then you hear about marathons, and now you're doing marathons, and then your buddy says, hey, you ought to try these ultra things, and then you end up running. There's so much where it can lead. And I find the love part is the same way. No one you don't fall in love with it the first couple steps.
Right.
But as you get out there and realize the benefits of it and how it makes you feel afterward, and that feeling of accomplishment, and that's when I think that love factor really kicks in. And then you get to spread the love to other people, and that's what has grown this sport to what it is today. And that's what I love about it the most, is just people that are willing to share. And I always tell people how much they inspire others, but they may never know they inspire people, because the person that they inspire may never come up to them and say, hey, you inspired me to start running. I watch you head out your door and do this running in the morning. But, runners are inspiring people. They really challenge themselves and take on these challenges. And, I really want runners to know that, because they think, a lot of them don't think they inspire anybody, but I know they do.
Ah, so good. Yeah, I love your phrase, let the sport come to you. I think a lot of people look at runners and say, well, I can't run 5 miles. I can't run 3 miles. And oftentimes, for example, we've got coaches listening to this that might have clients that are thinking about running, and they're thinking, well, how do I encourage that? How do I nudge that? How do I have that conversation? And I think what you're saying is, don't go out and run 3 miles. If you run 1 minute and then you walk for 20, that's great.
Yep.
And then the next day you run 90 seconds. You don't have to do that. Like you said, let the sport come to you. That is a very powerful statement. I love that. Do you want to build on that anymore in terms of the beginner runner or the maybe runner?
Yeah. I mean, originally when I had someone who really didn't run at all, I would say, well, just try to run a minute and walk a minute, or just try anything. Just get out there, run from one telephone pole to the next, and then walk a little bit. Do whatever, just start. And then I met this woman who lost a lot of weight, who was really obese, and she got into running, and she looked at me, and when I first met her, and she said, I used to run 15 seconds and then walk 15 seconds. And I thought 15 seconds was such a long way to run. And when I was talking to her, we were at the New York City Marathon, and she was going to run the New York City Marathon the next day. And I thought, wow. What a statement she just threw at me. Because, you start wherever you are, whatever you can physically do. And for her, she could run 15 seconds, which, isn't far to run, but that's what started it. And then she would walk, and then she would run again. And then eventually she got up to a minute, and then 2 minutes. And then she was heading out to run the New York City Marathon. So I know so many people could do this, but you really have to start wherever you are. And there is no blueprint out there. It's wherever you are, you have to start, and you will progress. That is the key. The thing I love the most about running when it comes to doing races is the clock never lies. The hard work you do, the benefit is that clock when you cross the line. Yeah. Now, there are runners that set world records and win Olympic medals and win, the big races. And then there are runners that just challenge themselves and want to cross that finish line and set what we call personal best or personal records, PRs or PBs, whatever you prefer. And to do that, you just have to do the work. And your reward is that you cross that finish line and look up at that clock, and those numbers change. They get, you do the hard work and get faster, you get stronger, and, you're running literally, as I said, comes to life right in front of you.
Yeah.
But there's no shortcuts in the sport of running, and nothing given. You have to earn it, and you have to want to do the work. But
Well,
that's the beauty of it. You know, you're not judged by anyone, and
mm-hmm.
You can't rely on another team member to run for you. You know, to run in groups and stuff to encourage each other helps, but no one can step in and do your running. I mean, it is really a self challenge that you have to take on.
And again, two things you said in there that I think are almost magical. One, it's all about you know, Kipchoge is doing his thing and it's fun to watch him and that's exciting.
Yep.
But for 99.999% of us, it's all about, can I be better than yesterday? And that's
yes.
cool. Like you and I will never race each other. We might be in the same race, but we're racing ourselves within that race. The other thing you said that was fascinating that I think is a great reminder to us is you said you kind of basically you said you get what you put into it. And the cool thing with that is, yes, it takes some hard work. It takes some effort. It takes getting off the couch, but you also do get out of it what you put into it. If you're willing to go out and run 15 seconds and build that to 30 seconds and a minute, you will see the benefits. And there's so few things in life, like in our jobs, oftentimes what we put into it does not necessarily produce measurable results. In running, what we put into it pretty much always produces. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you see the progression. Every runner looks back and thinks, they do a marathon or they make it to Boston and qualify or whatever it is. And you always think back and think, wow, I used to think running around the block was brutal. And we all start like that. Like the sport is just not easy on anybody. I can't tell you how many people looked at me right in the face and said, I can't run.
Yep.
I tried running and I got to the end of the street and I was out of breath. And I'm
totally.
I said, well, you start too quickly because you think, your image of running is what you see on TV. And, you're watching, you got glimpses of the New York City Marathon or the Boston Marathon, but you're not there. You need to stay within what you can do, not what you see on TV. And if you slow yourself down, it's really hard to convince people. If you slow yourself down, you actually will become faster because you'll gain endurance and you'll get better. But you have to slow down so you can cover more distance.
Right.
And it sounds very counterintuitive to say to somebody, "Oh, if you run slower, you will become faster." The people give you a puzzled look, but then after you work with them, they grasp what you're talking about and understand, because that's what does happen. If you slow down, you can run more distance, you can run further, where you gain the endurance and the strength, and then you will become faster by doing that. But it's hard to do in the beginning.
Right. Very good. Very good.
I find it hard to do. Even people that have been doing this sport for many years still find that hard to believe. But they know it happens. They understand it, but it's still hard to understand. To slow down, you will become faster.
Well, I think there's just a research study I saw 2 weeks ago came out saying that the biggest distinguisher, and this was within the elite athletes, this is the professionals, but one of the biggest single distinguishers between the best and the almost best were the number of easy runs during the week. And I thought that was fascinating. So you're dead on. So Bart,
you can't. And when I say all this stuff, you cannot overdo it, because the worst thing is to get injured and never make it to the starting line, or never make it till you fall in love with it. So you just be happy with small gains early on, and eventually you'll get the bigger gains. But there's no shortcuts.
It's a great reminder. You can't get to the finish line until you get to the start line.
That is the truth.
So biggest surprises. You have seen it all, my friend. Like I've lived my life running, but I've seen nothing compared to what you've seen. What are some of the biggest surprises you've seen in the sport, in your adventures? Just walk us through a couple of fun examples.
So biggest surprises for me, starting in the 70s, was the amount of women that would come into the sport, and to see the sport today be gender 50-50. I mean, it's the coolest thing.
Absolutely. And,
it was something that, I mean, guys, when we were running in the 70s, we thought there should, if there's 400 people in the race. There should be 200 women, 200 men. But when I started doing races in the late 70s, early 80s, if there were 400 runners in the race, there may have been 25 women total.
Wow.
Not today. In fact, you can go to some races where there's more women than men.
Yeah, I think it's almost
so that is
now.
Yeah, it is a welcome surprise and a big surprise. And, it was fueled by many things, but it was really a really cool thing to physically witness in my years of running. And another big surprise was just how the sport just continues to grow. There's just more people coming in and the amount of races. And, the first year I did the New York City Marathon was in 1982. And I don't know exactly, but I think the amount of finishers was about 15,000, somewhere in there. And we thought, man, how in the world are they going to pull off a marathon with 15,000 people in this race? Like, how is that physically going to be possible? And of course, now there's 58,000 or 60,000 and, all these races, London, Berlin. And that is a big surprise that the big city races really took off. New York City Marathon 1976, which was the first year they did the 5-borough course and really ran through the city and took over the city. And then if you look at all the other big city races around the world, you can see a lot of them started right after 1976. 1976, because people kept saying the people in London and Berlin and everywhere else, if New York can do it, we can do it. You can close down the streets. And that is a big surprise to me, how the big city marathons really took off on a global level. And now, if you try to do the 6 world majors, like 300,000 people try to enter the Tokyo Marathon, and they can only take whatever it is, 50,000 or whatever. It's crazy. I really did. That became a big surprise. I mean, I always thought the sport would grow. And when I started at Runner's World, we always looked at, how we can play a role in growing the sport and, certainly try to be ahead of the trends and what's happening. But some of the stuff was just shocking that really took off. And, I feel lucky to have started back in the 70s. I got to physically witness a lot of these changes, these big surprises, which are just the coolest thing. Very cool. People that right now, some of these guys and women in their 70s and 80s that are running marathons at a fast pace. I just saw 2 different gentlemen break 3 hours in the marathon in their 70s. And I mean, they look, not only do they run that fast, they look like they make it look easy, and they're in their 70s. So it's pretty inspiring. And to see that go on, I was at a 5K race in Florida back in February, the Gasparilla Run, and this 97-year-old woman did the 5K. And, I remember seeing her finish the year before, and she was 96, and the year before that, she was 95. So, I always tell her when she finishes how she's my inspiration and my idol. And she looks at me like I'm crazy. She goes, how can a 97-year-old woman be her idol? I said, you are out here doing what I hope I can do when I'm your age. And I may be slower than you when I'm at your age. So, it's, they just don't understand it. We make a big deal when she finishes. It's pretty cool to witness. But that stuff is, what's that?
It changes the conversation because it used to be when you're 70, you're supposed to start slowing down. When you're 80, you should really be taking it easy. And then you're out there at this 5K seeing a 97-year-old woman finishing for the 3rd year in a row, and all of a sudden all the 70 and 80-year-olds go, oh my gosh, that lady's 20 years older than me. What's my problem? I need to get moving.
And she always kids around with me. She said, well, I didn't start till I was in my 80s. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Don't give me any excuses. You're 97 years old finishing a race. I don't want to hear anything. I mean, that's the stuff that I love about our sport. And the other big surprise, I never thought that I would get to know some of these people that have overcome so many obstacles that I just, people come up to me. Like, I'm not at a race with a sign that says, hey, come up and tell me your story. But people just walk up to me and tell me their story. And some of them are just it's so inspiring. Like, I just can't, I just look at them and I don't know how they overcome the odds. And I'll give you a perfect example. Just a couple weeks ago, I was at the Oklahoma City Marathon, and this woman, Amy Downs, who I met before, and Amy was in the Murrah building at the Oklahoma City bombing, sitting at her desk, bomb goes off. She gets covered in 10 feet of concrete, sitting at her desk. Lucky for her, she did have a little place to breathe, but she is literally buried alive till paramedics can find her and brave people that were willing to go into that building, not knowing if the rest of the building would fall down to save people. And she was one of those people they saved. All this 10 feet of rubble crushing her. And she did have a little place to breathe till they rescued her. And, when she got out of there and, really realized that she survived and that 168 people didn't, she said, okay, I got a second chance on life. I'm not going to be this overweight person that's just going to die young and not do anything. And does Ironmans now and marathons. And, it's amazing to look at her and think she was literally buried alive. And now she's out there just running free and being happy. And, those kind of stories just absolutely blow me away. Like some people's stories, I never leave my mind. And hers is a perfect example. When I first met her, I first met her at the Little Rock Marathon. And, she told me her story, and you can see the visible scars like on her legs because of all the stuff that fell on her body.
Wow.
But, you can never see those emotional scars that are in there. And that's what I think of more than the physical stuff. We can overcome some of the physical, but the emotional stuff of surviving something like that and then willing to make change. Like she said, she lost 200 pounds.
Wow.
And literally changed her life. When you look at her, and I got a picture with her 2 weeks ago, she is just smiling. You would think she lived the most glorious life and was given everything for free. She just got this radiant smile. But, when you hear a story, a little different. So it's that kind of stuff. I never thought I would connect with people like that. And it's pretty cool experience, pretty inspiring to really hear these stories. And sometimes people like Amy, they don't think their story is that big a deal. And I have to remind them, like, your story is unbelievable. It's not that it's a big deal. It's very inspiring, and people would get a lot out of just hearing your story.
Yeah.
But some people are afraid to tell their story, or they don't think it's a story, or they're just shy, and they're never going to tell anyone. But there's a lot of stories like that I've encountered over the years, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, everybody's got a story. That's so.
That is the truth.
Bart, you've done so many races. You just mentioned about 6 different races in the last 3 sentences. What's your favorite? Do you have one that you say?
Yeah, that's the easiest question ever. Everybody says, oh my God, you run whatever it is, 1,500 races. It has to be hard to. I say no, and actually it's really easy. I always say that the most memorable run that I've ever did, I was doing the Rome Marathon. Rome Marathon 2001 was the first marathon I did where I wasn't concerned about my time. I really just wanted to run it. And my mom was there, and my mom came to a lot of races and always cheered me on and was a big supporter of me. But when I did a Rome Marathon, she was at Trevi Fountain, and I stopped during the marathon to give her a hug and hang out with her a little bit. And she was looking at me like, "You're running a marathon. Get running." And I said, "No, it's all right. It's not about the running." And so, I got this cool picture of my mom just smiling and my arm around her at Trevi Fountain. That by far is my favorite running moment, by far.
Wow.
And then if I were to say my favorite race, the Comrades Marathon in South Africa, by far is my favorite race. And, it's a brutal, they call it a marathon, but it's actually 56 miles.
Right.
And it's a hilly course, and it's the oldest ultra in the world, and it's the largest ultra in the world. But that's not what it's all about. It has a spirit in it, and it's made a lot of change over the years when they really suppressed the black athletes from running the race, and especially during the tough apartheid years in South Africa. And to now see the black athletes flourish and win the race, that's a pretty cool thing to physically witness. And when I was at the race in 2010, and I spoke to a lot of Black South African runners. And they told me that during those really tough apartheid years, they felt like when they were running comrades, that apartheid didn't exist. They felt free. And, you know, I often think of that when when they're looking you right in the eye, telling you that, you know, really felt their freedom for people that, you know, Black citizens that grew up under apartheid. And I always thought to myself, wow, if a sport can suppress something as evil as apartheid, that's the sport I want to be involved with. And it's hard to talk about this stuff because those people, you know, it's when you see it in their face when they talk about it, and the tears start to flow down their cheeks because they realize now that, you know, when I was there, they can run free, and they always didn't have that opportunity. It's pretty moving to see them accomplish so much in a short period of time. In fact, Willie Matolo was the first Black South African to win the New York City Marathon. I believe he won it in like 93, somewhere in there. And, you know, I thought this guy trained to be a marathon runner in South Africa during apartheid where, you know, it was dangerous. And, you know, somehow he got good enough to win the New York City Marathon. And when I finished Comrades, I was at the finish line. I get this tap on the shoulder, and this tall African guy, you know, puts his arm around me and says, "Hey, good job, Bart." And it was Willie Matolo. I could not believe it. I was like, dang. And I always said, like, when I was in South Africa, if I could pick one person to greet me at the finish line, it would have been Willie Matolo. And he was there. I was like, how could that happen? I mean, it kind of freaked me out because he was such a idol to me to think that he could become a gooder runner as he was, with no support system and no encouragement, and actually living in danger, being a Black citizen running through the streets in South Africa. And he was able to, you know, train hard enough and to be good enough to win the New York City Marathon.
Wow.
And he ran Comrades a couple times. And, you know, it amazes. Comrades is such a competitive race that I don't know. I don't remember exactly what Willie's best place was, but he never won Comrades. And this guy could win the New York City Marathon. So that'll tell you how fast these guys go for 56 miles in the women. It's incredible.
Wow. But
it's that race is a powerful race to make change like that. So that's what puts it as my favorite race. It's not the course. It's, you know, it's got incredible long history because it's been around so long, but it has a checkered past, but they made the changes that they needed to make. And that's the beauty of it. You know, people can accept that you're doing things wrong as long as you're willing to make change.
Sure.
And
Sure.
They made change, and that's why, I don't think I would have ever run the race during apartheid. But 2010, apartheid was abolished, and South Africa was pretty thriving place at the time. In fact, it was when they were hosting the World Cup soccer. It was going to start like 5 days after Comrades. The country was abuzz. It was a pretty cool place to be at that time.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's talk to the serious runners for a moment here. So those of you who are just getting started, the Yasso 800s. If there's anything, your name has a lot connected to it, but there's nothing more closely associated than the good old Yasso 800s. I love them for marathon training, but it's one of my favorite workouts. I think I emailed you. I did them last week. I don't have a marathon calendar. It's just one of those great sessions that it makes you dig deep. How did that come about? What's the story on the Yasso 800?
Yeah, so the Yasso 800s, Amby Burfoot named them after me because it was my favorite workout. 10 times 800, 400-meter recovery. I told him about this correlation. I told him, and Amby Burfoot was the editor of Runner's World for many, many years. And Amby won won the Boston Marathon in 1968, which was a pretty good win to have on your resume, winning the Boston Marathon. And so, Amby is, he was one of my idols as in person that I worked with at Runner's World, as a writer, as a runner, as just a person, just a great guy. And I was rooming with him, and that's when I told him, I do this 10 times 800, and there's a correlation if I average, 240 in the 800s, doing 10 of them. I can run a 240 marathon. He thought I was crazy. But then
he's like, that doesn't make
when
any
he saw
sense.
me do the workout, and then I actually did the race, and then he said, wow, it really does work. And then, I said, and he said, I'm going to do some investigation on this. And he did. And then, of course, the story in Runner's World back in the early 90s. And then Andy named them Yasso 800s because he said I had an unusual name. He said Yasso's like a Yahoo type name,
Right.
or a Google. It's an unusual name. People never heard it. It's going to stick. And I said, I thought he was completely out of his mind when he was working on this story. And the thing I always said to people, I never said the Yasso 800s work for anyone but me. And they did work for me, but I don't know if they worked for everyone. And that's what I kept telling Andy. And he said, don't worry about it. I'll do you just tell me, how you do the workout, when do you do it, and all that kind of stuff. And let me work on the story. He named them after me without me knowing they were going to be named Yasso 800s. And since that article in Runner's World, which again was back in the early 90s, there's not a day in my life that I don't hear about Yasso 800s. I mean, whether it's a tweet or Facebook post or Instagram these days. In the old days, it was emails, and prior to emails, it was phone calls and letters. Yeah, it's amazing. But I always kid around with people. I said, don't ever have a workout named after you. You'll get emails the rest of your life. And I say that in a kidding way, but people understand what I'm talking about. Right. It's kind of fun to have a workout named after you, but it really, Amby was brilliant. Amby is a genius in real life. I mean, he's such a smart guy. But he really knew that people would gravitate to these things, and he knew they would work for a lot of people, and he knew people would like doing it. It gave him like a real simplistic way to set a marathon goal and how to train for it. So he loved them. And honestly, when the magazine came out, I thought, okay, I'm going to hear about this Yasso 800 thing for about 2 months, and then the magazine will fade away. And then this thing came out, the internet. And once it got out there, it's never stopped. So, but it's been fun.
I love it. Love it. Well, I will thank him on your behalf. That's great stuff. Easy to remember, and it's a classic. So your quote is saying repeatedly, life's a journey, but it's about how far we've come, not how fast we run through it. Now, you're a pretty fast guy, so it's not like you're slow. And so, I'll say this because it fits me. This is a really fast guy, a great runner who says, folks, it's not how fast we run through it. It's how far we've come. Can you expand on that philosophically a little bit?
Yeah. I always tell people, because I have some of my quotes, people I get people that say, I don't understand what you mean. And I say, okay, if you don't understand what I mean, then you're not grasping what it's all about. It's really not how far you go, it's how far you've come. That's one of the things I like to tell people, because it's, you can see this progression. You can see what you're doing now that you couldn't do even just 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago or 2 years ago. And that's what it's all about. And it's the places it takes you. It's not, when I did my first run, I always tell people, God, I wish I could have taken a selfie in 1976 when I went out for my first run, because if you saw me, you wouldn't believe I could run, or, I would never have become the chief running officer at Runner's World, because I had long hair and a beard and a Budweiser t-shirt and cut off jeans with a belt and, tube socks and a beat up pair of Keds, and I go out and run because that's what I had to run in.
Right.
And I did make it a mile, and I thought, man, I almost killed myself running a mile. And when I came back to my house, if somebody would have greeted me and said, hey, you're going to run all over the world. You're going to work at Runner's World. You're going to do, I would have said, look, I'm hoping in 2 days I can run a mile again. Like, I'm sore, and that's not stuff to do. But that's what fascinates me. And that's the message I like to spread to people, that you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's down the road. But luckily for me, I kept going down that road. Like, I didn't, when I got back home and said, okay, I really want to go back out there 2 days and try to run a mile again, maybe go a little bit faster, a little bit further. And I just never stopped. And that's the thing I always try to tell the people, like, you don't know where the sport will take you, but I can tell you one thing: if you don't take it seriously and don't try, it's not going to take you anywhere. You got to throw yourself in and look at the journey. Because I never thought it would be possible to end up at places. I ended up running a marathon in Antarctica and the Arctic Circle and Iceland and Greenland and Nepal. I mean, everywhere. Turkey, all these places that I did these races, I just didn't seem possible. I mean, I always was intrigued to go to places like this, but again, to go there and run these races, the journey meant everything to me, and to immerse myself in these cultures of people that I met. I always would study a lot before I would go to a place and kind of know what I'm going to experience, and a little bit of history. And, it helped me out. And when I met people, they realized I knew a little bit about them. I just wasn't a total stranger coming up to them. And then, I think that helped me in communicating and also getting to meet a lot of people.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
But I believe in the journey, where it takes you.
Well, okay, so let's talk about journey a little bit here. A lot of our listeners are health and wellness coaches or folks that are thinking about going that direction. They're helping other people with their journeys.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? And you've talked about a little bit of it, but what advice would you have for them when it comes to tuning into the uniqueness of each person's journey? So you just mentioned you would study in advance. You'd know the audience that you're going in to meet with, about their culture, about some unique things. Other things that these coaches could be doing to help them tune into that uniqueness of their individual clients?
Yeah, I would always say to people, when I got someone who came to me that, wanted to do what I do, or wanted to run all over the place, or, travel, or take, use running as a journey, I would always try to match them up with someone that I thought was similar to them. And when I mean similar, sort of like similar age, similar type occupation. I never worried about, people always think about running ability, and I never looked at that. I just would sort of like-minded would be the perfect word. To example, like get them people that really, when they meet these other people, they're going to think like, wow, this person's almost just like me. And that's when I think the things really come and grow. And then they meet these people and find out that, this person has done the 6 world majors or whatever they've done. And they go, okay, I should be able to do this, or I really want to do this after meeting these people and hearing their stories. I always tried to match people with someone very similar to them. Perfect example, my girlfriend Ann's a pretty good runner, and she's a single mom, 2 kids. They're, still in school, and she works and she went back to school after 23 years. So to get her to stay focused and keep running, align her with some other women that are in her situation, and they will encourage each other and motivate each other and keep each other honest, and accountability. And, I just think that helps in that journey, how they can keep going. And that, that means the world to someone else when you realize, because I'm sure my girlfriend Ann thinks, I got to be the only one that's, working full time, going to school full time, taking care of 2 kids. But I know there are other people out there in that same situation. So when you meet them, that's when you can motivate each other on this journey and help each other. And it just reminds you that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Other people are doing it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just say, like, I can't do it all. And, I know it's hard, but we want to do it. And we want to stay on this journey and keep going down the road. So I use her as inspiration all the time to keep me out there.
Excellent. Love it. All right. So let's talk about the other item that everybody says about running. Oh, if they haven't done their research, oh my gosh, I can't run because it's so terrible for my knees. It's just going to blow up my knees.
Yeah, my knees.
What do you say to the person that says, oh, run, it's bad for your knees?
Yeah. I got to introduce them some orthopedic surgeons, because all the orthopedic surgeons that I meet, when I ask them about that, and the first thing they all said, and it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a surgeon in California or Connecticut or Florida or Maine or Minnesota, they all say the most time we place joints on people, their people are overweight, and that's what did in their joints.
Yep.
And running is not bad for your knees. I think where running gets a bad rap on the knees is if somebody had a knee injury from another sport, like say you played basketball or football in early years, and you have this, slightly torn meniscus or something's wrong, and then you got some instability, and then you go out and run, and the running will aggravate it because it's not correct, and then they blame it on the running.
Right.
The surgeons I talk to say, no, get out and move. Your joints are meant to do this. This is what you want to do and what you should do.
Yep.
But I'm not overdo it. There are overuse injuries, which are not good. But I mean, everything in moderation and running the correct mileage and not starting out too quickly, letting your body build up to the mileage that you can handle correctly. It's this stuff, running is good for your knees. Proper footwear is key. To make sure you're in the proper shoe. And I always suggest going to what we call a specialty running store, because they know their business. They know proper shoes, and they'll figure out the type of runner you are and what shoe is going to work best for you. And then there's going to be there's going to be 10 or 12 or maybe even 15 different shoes you can choose from. So it's not like no one's going to say you have to have this brand. They're going to tell you need a stability shoe or a cushion shoe or whatever you got going on, and then they'll suggest a couple models and a couple brands, and then you got to go out and see what really works for you. But shoes are it's number one. But you get in the right shoe, it's going to help you out tremendously.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. My background, I've been a physical therapist for 25 years, and I get that question a lot, and the research is incredibly clear, and it's exactly what you said. If you're running on an injured knee, that's a different question.
Yep.
But running itself,
you're going to make it worse.
Cause injuries unless you're building up too fast, unless you're falling when you run, like any other fall. So just want to get that out there for everybody.
If people have really poor technique because they're just not running correctly, they can bring on injuries. But it just, overall, running does not do it.
Totally. All right. So let's turn the mirror around a little bit. You are Mr. Runner. Okay. You're the mayor. You're the CEO. Outside of running, is there an area again, this is a health and wellness coaching podcast. Is there an area you'd be willing to share with us in terms of something that you're struggling with your own health and wellness aside from running?
Oh, sure.
And you can kind of walk us through that journey.
Yeah. The only problems I've had in the past 30 years is Lyme disease. And I had a lot of side effects from Lyme disease, Bell's palsy, a lot of paralysis on the right side of my body, a lot of joint damage. I had a lot of side effects from the amount of antibiotics that I've been on. Mm-hmm. I've done as much as 2 months straight of oral antibiotics like doxycycline, but I also have done 6 months straight of IV antibiotics, 2 drips a day for 6 months through a PICC line. Going through that 6-month cycle, it wears you out, but I came out the other end feeling really good. But I listened to my doctor. He said, look, you have to not push yourself through this process and let your body heal and let the antibiotic really work. And then you're going to be stronger in the end. So I listened to his advice and took it easy, just did a little exercise here and there, and came out of it, feeling great. And this past summer, I did blood irradiation treatments, which I think really helped me out, where they take the blood out of you, run it through radiation, and then drip it back in slowly. And that seemed to help me out. I still have problems from Lyme disease, but I think the modern medicine, which, I love these people that are out there really trying to help people. It's helped me out tremendously. It's a debilitating disease, and it's beat me up pretty much, but I feel pretty good. I'm in my mid-60s, and I think I made some progress. I'm never going to run fast again from some of the joint damage I have, but I listen to my body. That's the number one thing I do in running. When I go out for my runs these days, the first thing I tell myself is, don't hurt yourself. Listen to your body. I do a little warm up just to see how I feel. And, that gives me a little sign that it's going to be a pretty rough day. Let's just do like 2 miles and stay on the soft surface and not do any hills. And if I run that little warm up half mile or quarter mile, whatever it is, I don't even know. I just run this little cinder trail. And if I feel, you know what, I feel all right today. I feel a little bit better. Then I'll try a 4 or 6 mile run. And, I really listen to my body, and I let my body dictate what I'm going to go out and do.
Good
I don't just think I can do it. I can
no matter what.
It's not it's not the way that you come out of just hurting yourself, and that doesn't do any good. So I just really, really pay attention to my body, and I think nutrition plays a big role in a lot of things. So I've been a vegetarian for 31 years. I love being a vegetarian, and I just try to eat properly. I will get ice cream every once in a while, with Aunt's kids. I'm guilty of that kind of stuff. We go to get Sundays and hang out together and have some fun. But 95% of the time, I really watch what I eat, and I try to, eat what I consider a good diet, a proper diet. I really try to get my salads and drink my smoothies and really try to eat healthy. I think it means makes a big difference.
Oh, huge. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going okay with the Lyme disease. I've been following your journey, and it's encouraging to hear that you're finding some ways to turn the corner.
Yeah,
with that.
The medical community is very helpful. And then, I do see some, local hospital. I was going for therapy to try to, once my joints are damaged, stretching they do and help me out.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the treadmill, what's it called? The Ultra G or whatever they call it. I can't even think of the name of it. Ultra G, thank you. The name slipped my mind. Yeah, that thing is incredible. So I'll go in there for 5 minutes, and it's amazing what they have today. But it's cool to go in the physical therapist and say, look, I would like to run, but I'm gonna run within my means. I'm not asking you to get me to run 100 miles later today. I'm gonna listen to you. But it's cool that there's stuff out there. People are willing to get you going, and they don't want you to say, oh no, you should just relax in a chair the rest of your life. That's I don't hear that when I go to my physical therapist. They know what I want. They know I want to go out and run 100 miles, but right. They kind of get me that I can just go out and run, and then we meet a happy medium there, and just say, hey, if I can do 3 or 4 miles 4 times a week, I'll be really happy.
Well, and I think one of the things I love about what you're saying is that listen to your body thing, because that applies to everyone at every level of ability and background and history, whether you're just starting off or whether you have the experience that you have. And I think one of the things the wellness coaches are really good about doing is drawing out of people how to listen. Basically, they're turning up that volume and allowing them to hear that, because a lot of people, they're just going through life. They're not listening to their bodies in any way. Forget running. They're not listening to their bodies in any way. They're just going through the motions. And so I love that you brought that up. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and I think that, once they teach people that when you go in for physical therapy, that doesn't mean when you walk out the door that you're healed and you're ready to go. Like it takes time. It doesn't happen with one session and 10 minutes later you're good to go.
Right.
Every physical therapist sends you on when you do this stretching routine or whatever it is, that's what you have to be serious about and follow that. And then you come out to the better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. 2 more questions and then I'll let you go. I really appreciate your time, Bart. This has been so much fun.
Oh, no problem, Brent.
As you peer into that crystal ball, the running crystal ball, let's not talk about the elites. Let's not talk about the 2-hour marathon, any of that stuff. But for the everyday runner, are there some things that you see in that crystal ball that you think are around the corner that might be a little change from what we've seen in the last decade or 2?
Yeah, I look in that crystal ball a lot because, in my 31 years at Runner's World, I said earlier, we always tried to stay ahead of the trends and, realize what's going to happen down the road, because that's how you become a successful business, as you know. So I was always staring into that crystal ball, and even though I'm retired, I still do that. And I still see the sport growing. I still see people realizing the benefits of it. I think it's changing a little bit. I don't think people are going to do as many races as they've done in the past. I see that, and some people tell me, oh, I used to, do 10, 12 races a year. Now I only do like 6 or 7. And the trail running community is growing, and I think that's still going to grow.
Right.
And what I think what's going to happen there is, in the trail running community, and when I started the 50-mile races, and there were a lot of them were on the roads, and now all that stuff is on the trail. And of course, there are a lot of the big 100-mile races and 50-mile races, but I think a lot of the trail runs are going to get a more shorter distance, 10 miles and 5 miles. And so trail running is still going to be popular. And I think having some of the shorter distance will open it up to a lot more people.
Yeah.
Because some people are just intimidated that, oh yeah, I want to be a trail runner. And the shortest trail run I find is 50 kilometers, 31 miles. So that's not like a jump off point for people. Yeah, I'll start with 50K. Yeah. So, I see the trail run community, I see some of the bigger races having a shorter version. And of course, road racing has been doing that for years. And I see that happening in the trail community now. I think that'll help growing that sport.
Interesting.
Because that's a more fun way to be a trail runner, to start out doing a 10K or a 10-mile trail run, and then eventually, do a 50K. But,
right.
But not everyone can just jump out there and just do a 50K right away. It's and I still see women coming into the sport at this level. I'm sure it's leveled off a bit, but I can still see some growth in there because, like I say, the encouragement that you get in the sport and the way it's turned into more of a social sport.
Mm-hmm.
I just see women just love that stuff. I just crack up when I run with these groups, these women, and they say when they're doing their run, they don't ever talk about running. It's about work or their husband or their kids doing this or this kind of stuff. That all goes on when they run. And then they go for coffee after the run, and then they talk about running nonstop. I love that scenario. It just cracks me up. But when they're out there running, they don't talk about running at all. Everything else that's going on in life and your life, and they're sharing this with their friends because they want they want advice or help or just get it off their chest to go out there and say it. And then, but then they get to that coffee shop after the run, and now, bam, I'm doing this race, I'm doing that, I did this race. And I just think that's such a cool scenario.
That is cool.
And I can just see that, why people would gravitate to that. It's just a fun atmosphere. You're out there and helping each other, encouraging each other, running with each other, helping each other in life, all the problems we face.
Right.
And then we can go have fun and brag about the races we're going to do and that kind of stuff. I think it's pretty cool. So I do think that flow of women into the sport of running is still going to grow.
Fantastic. Last question, Bart. Any final words of wisdom? Something I haven't teed up with the right question or whatever that you'd like to share?
Oh, you've been awesome,
get out
Brad.
there.
You've been awesome. Yeah, I just get out there and do it. I can't say it enough to just try it. Don't take that attitude. That's not for me. Just get out there. And a reminder that you are inspirational to other people. And the example I've been using lately is this woman reached out to me about her son, who apparently I inspired. She would come to my talks, and she would bring her son, who was an autistic kid. And they would go home, and he kind of, doesn't communicate a lot to his mom. And she encouraged him to communicate. And she told me, she said, okay, one day I said to him, okay, what's going on in there? Talk to me. And she would get her pen and paper out, and, a lot of nights he wouldn't talk. And then one night he started talking, and it was apparently after I spoke at a race that's in their hometown. And this kid said, he wished he could be Bart Yasso because everyone likes him and everyone hangs out with him, and nobody hangs out with him because he's awkward socially, and all this stuff he said. That he really wanted to be Bart Yasso, and he wished Bart Yasso was his age. And as one was writing this stuff down, and she was kind enough to email me what her son said. And I used that as an example, like how could I ever known that I inspired this autistic kid who really doesn't even communicate to his own family, let alone communicate to me or other people.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky that mom reached out to me. And it's so funny, the last thing he said to his mom that night was, "Yeah, I want to be Bart Yasso, but I don't want to do all that running stuff. Like, he's crazy." So, when I read what she said, it was hard to read because, I put myself in that kid's shoes. Like, we all want to be accepted by everyone. This poor kid didn't. So it breaks your heart. But I use him a lot as an example of how we inspire people and may never know it. I would have never known it if this woman didn't reach out to me.
Wow.
So, if you can connect with people that you don't even, like, I had no clue that he would want to be Bart Yasso. But that is a pretty cool email to receive. So it was a hard email to read when you're at your desk and you got to go close the door and read this email again. I think, God almighty. But that's what our sport is all about, to be honest, to connect and inspire with others and take it to the next level, just support people and help people. That's what I love about it.
So well said. And you're probably, all the listeners are probably thinking, okay, I need to tell the people that have inspired me because they may not know. So
yeah, that's right, Brad.
Great reminder.
Great example. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it'll make somebody's day.
Yeah. Bart, thank you so much, not just for joining us today, but just for the impact you've had on so many people over the years. Keep it going. We really appreciate you. And again, thanks for jumping on today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad.
Oh, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. One thing I did want to lay out in more detail, he talked about the Yasso 800s, and those of you who are runners, serious runners, you've heard of that. That's what he's known best for. So let me tell you exactly what this is in case you want to try it. It's 800s, so that's 2 laps of the track. You do 10 of them, and you do a 400 or a 1-lap jog in between. And the concept, which is a crazy concept because you're talking about completely different things, but the concept he discovered is that for many people, your time in your 800s equals your time in your marathon. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. So let's say, for example, that you run 2 laps of the track in 3 minutes and 10 seconds on average. So you do 10 of them, you get that jog in between, and your average for those 10 is 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Well, if you have a pretty good base of mileage, then your marathon time will probably end up being somewhere around 3:10. Again, it's fascinating because you're talking minutes in one hand and you're talking hours in the other, but for many people it works. So anyway, that's what that session is. A couple of things. One, I mentioned the new website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Super excited about it. If you haven't been on there lately, be fun to check it out. And the retreat early registration deadline. I can't overemphasize this enough because we're right at the tail end of that, and it's a big discount. So if you've been thinking about the retreat, reach out to us. The email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Happy to answer any questions you have, but don't wait until after that registration deadline because you're going to be super bummed out. Email results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Here for you anytime. Thank you again for all the folks out there that are actually subscribing to this. I'm told that's an important thing, so you'll probably hear me mention that a few times. Until next time, let's go get better. Let's get better and help our clients, our family members, our friends, and even our community do the same. I'll look forward to speaking with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast.